What is the scariest thing that has happened to you? I was robbed at gunpoint in college. We had heard about a bunch of robberies that were happening around campus where the victims would get the shit beaten out of them. There were 2 guys and 3 of us, but one of the guys had a gun. They walked up to us and immediately pointed the gun at me, hit me with it in the shin and chest, and then pushed us up onto someone's front porch. While they were taking our wallets and phones, with the gun still pointed at me the whole time, the guys who lived at the house, whose front porch we were on, opened the door. So at that point there were 7 of us being robbed. The robbers took whatever we had and then walked away. I thought the gun was fake the entire time, so it wasn't as scary as you'd think. But when we all rushed inside the house after they left, we saw the robbers walk back up to the porch and then shoot through the glass door. I was so close to the shots that I could taste gunpowder and feel the dust from the glass on my face. I bolted through this random row house for the back door and tried to hide under the back deck stairs, but was completely exposed and couldn't go anywhere. I could only hear everyone running inside the house and I was convinced they were coming in to shoot us. The robbers ran off instead. When I was about 19, a guy taking acid for the first time freaked out and tried to stab me with a hunting knife. I was also on acid, not even close to the first time, thank God. What triggered his freak out? Cindy from the Brady Bunch movie. He lunged for me with the knife twice before his friends grabbed him and held him back while I left. A close friend of mine growing up was actually killed this way. He was trying to calm down another mutual friend of ours from a bad mushroom trip. The mutual friend pleaded insanity and spent around 3 years in jail. He's trying to pull his life back together, but I'm sure he's living with an immense amount of guilt. I think I was about 10 when this happened. My grandparents used to have this zip line that went from a tree out over the river that bordered their property. Lots of fun. We spent many a day the summer it went up zip lining out and dropping into the river. One day a bunch of family and friends were there, and we were all using the zip line. Then my dad took a turn, but the handle snapped when he left the platform and he crashed down onto the rocks on the riverbank. I can't remember for sure, but it was probably around a 10-meter fall. My brother and I had just taken turns before him, so we'd been coming out of the water as it happened. He was passed out face down in the water, and it took a few seconds for it to register for everyone. A few of my uncles ran down to pull him up onto the shore, and then he started having seizures, was swallowing his tongue. Just really scary shit. Like I said, I was 10, so I don't fully remember everything that happened, and I was taken over to the other side of the yard with my siblings so we couldn't see how rough he looked. My aunt called an ambulance and it came pretty quick, and it ended up only being an overnight at the hospital. And he just had a concussion, broken sinus, and a bunch of scrapes, bruises. Scariest moment of my life without a doubt. I thought he was dead, and he very well could have been. Thankfully, he's still with us. This is more unsettling than scary, but it had me shook up for a bit. Was at a restaurant with my fiance. We were the only ones eating there. It's one of our frequent spots. 2 guys came in. One dressed like a construction worker and the other dressed somewhat nice. They asked for takeout menus and just sat there by the front door. We walked out to go to the grocery store, which was in the same strip of buildings, but about 100 yards away. The nicely dressed man got up and walked out behind us, as he said something in a foreign language to his friend. We hopped in the car to park closer to the store. When we got out, we noticed he was standing in front of the store just awkwardly looking around. As I walked by, I could hear and see him talking into an earpiece in a low voice, still in a foreign language. I told my fiancée about this and we took our time in the store. I told her to wait inside while I grabbed the car, but she decided to come as she didn't want to be alone. When we walked out, the guy was gone. But as we got in my car, I noticed a vehicle with both doors open 2 spots behind me. Both of those men were sitting in there trying not to make eye contact. We looked in the rear view and the man in a construction outfit was motioning with his head towards our car. We drove behind the car and noticed it was an out-of-state tag. Took a picture and called the police station to let them know what had happened. We're 2 of the most calm people we know. but I've never felt more off about something in my life. Way too many circumstantial things going on to not have something up. Why follow us out? Why wait outside the store? Why drive your car across the parking lot to sit behind mine? It doesn't help we live in a city that's one of the nation's highest in sex trafficking. It may not be the scariest story, but I've never been that freaked out in my life, and I've been through some wild things. When I was younger, 7 or 8, me and my mom were driving late at night and we noticed was driving very close to us to the left. The guy rolled his window down and was wearing a bandana around his face and was holding up a very large knife. My mom started speeding up but he kept matching our speed. He was trying to run us off the road on some Jeepers Creepers shit. When we slowed down he slowed down. He kept showing us the knife and dragging across his neck and pointing to us. This went on for what felt like forever, until we got blessed that there was a car ahead of us in the piece of shit's lane and an exit ramp to the right. My mom sped up and just in time the driver had to slam his brakes before rear-ending the car in front and we swerved to the exit at the perfect time and he was forced to keep driving ahead. Yet I didn't sleep comfortably for the next year or two. Falling out of a boat while whitewater rafting in Colorado. It was many years ago when I was with the Boy Scouts. I was probably 13 at the time. We were having fun on the water, paddling through the rapids and such, when suddenly our boat turns up on a large rock. I was towards the top end of the boat, hanging on for dear life when one of the other kids grabs onto my ankle, presumably in an attempt to grab onto anything that would keep him from being pulled into the water. Needless to say, we both ended up in the rapids. And the next thing I knew I was being pulled along violently with the current. I had a flotation vest on which kept me from going under, but the water splashing into my face made it seem that way. I tried grabbing onto rocks and such, but they were slick with algae and wouldn't give me any hold at all. Finally, another group managed to grab the drag handle on my vest and pull me into their boat. I was shaking and sobbing uncontrollably by that point. It has to this day been the only time in my life, and hopefully things will remain that way, that I was genuinely scared that I was going to die. What I remember being the humor of the whole experience though was the guide shouting to me, "Grab the oar," and my response to him, screamed at the top of my lungs, "Forget the damn oar, save me." Was 13. A family friend from church, a man about 35, was always at outhouse. He was new to our church and won everyone over with his personality. He came over one Friday night and kept asking my 16-year-old sister to go to the movies with him. He was persistent. She kept telling him she had plans. She snuck away from him and ran upstairs to her bedroom. Me being a 13-year-old boy wanted to go. I kept saying, "I'll go. Can I go?" He finally gives in. It was at night. On the way to theater he was oddly quiet. He then said he wanted to stop at a store to buy candy cause at the theater it costs too much. He turns down this abandoned gravel road with trees on both sides, far outside of town. He pulls over, turns car off and sits in silence staring out the window. I'm naive and clueless. About 5 minutes later he says there used to be a store here. He starts car and drives to the theater. He slept through the entire movie. A week later it's revealed he was a fraud and his only intentions was to seduce the women and girls in the congregation. He had ruined a couple of marriages and had prior convictions for rape and child molestation. He wanted to get my sister alone with him. He took me maybe to make it look like he was sincere about going to a movie. Looking back at it when older I got chills cause he was obviously contemplating molesting me or worse. Something made him change his mind. Thank goodness. But I was young and not suspicious at all. Whoa, it still rattles me when I think back to that night. When I was 17, I joined an outward bound course where you just go outside hiking, camping and kayaking etc. We go as a group of 12 with 2 trainers. So when we were kayaking from one place to another, we went a bit too fast and thought we could go further than that, so we decided to finish our next day goal. That's where the disaster came. We miscalculated the distance and stuck in the ocean with nowhere to stop by. Night was coming and waves were high. We got constantly pushed towards the cliff. And if we do crash, we will probably die. It's like 10 PM when we got there, but it's too dark to stop by. So we back out and landed on a rock beach where kayak is not supposed to land on. One of the trainer landed first to give us instruction to land on a rock beach in the dark with big waves. The trainer also needed to catch our kayak. When he was catching the third one with other boys' help, the waves pushed the kayak and he fell down with the kayak crashing on his face. He immediately screamed, and that was the scariest things I've heard. Turns out he hurt his left eye and he could not see. He was fine at the end, but the fear of losing someone's vision and dying in the ocean changed my life. The urge of survive at the time makes me realize maybe I don't want to suicide after all.